All right, we're going to get rocking and rolling. Welcome to the Thursday Night Big Book Study Workshop, the program of recovery. We're going to open this with a bit of outside help. What do we need for a good meeting? God. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So this series is going to be a little different. We're going to hit some highlights of the book, and we're going to go through it pretty quick. So we have a format that when you go through it, you know that what highlights you're looking for. Whose job is it to read the book? Right, and so what we do is we're going to share some of our experience, strength, and hope as we went through it, right? And that way, when you go through it, you'll know what you're looking for and all that stuff. We're going to stick strictly with the book. There's so many outside influences to this thing, and it's kind of really remarkable within our own fellowship. So I am a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony, and sobriety date's April 8, 1989. And everybody should have somebody that makes them feel good about their sobriety. Joanne, how you doing?
Hello, everyone. My name is Joanne. My recovery date is August 24th, 2014. And my service position is reining Tony in. And it is a full-time job.
Takes a group effort. If you're easily offended, you won't be disappointed by the time one of these things go through, right? I just had enough time to get home changing, so you guys won't, really feel it, but she will. It's been a long day. So what we ask is keep an open mind. A lot of us go with what other people taught us. Anybody been there? You hear this, you think this, you go with a lot of useless information, right? You'll find it useless as you go through this. So we stick basically with the book. We have an online chat group that's around the book, and it's amazing how many people recommend other methods. Right? And so this is not we do a bit of the intellectual kind of gather information and stuff like that, but this is actually a spiritual course of action when you get to that place of seeing you need this thing for the change, right? And all the information you need for this experience is what we're going to go through. So one of the things that ask you to keep an open mind. If you have a pen and paper and there's something that doesn't sit well with you, you could kind of write it down and talk to your sponsor about it later, or Joanne, right? So, you could kind of hit us up with that stuff. Because we're going to say probably a lot of items that are in the book, and you're going to argue with us, but you're not actually arguing with us. You're arguing with the information contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So what we ask is just pretend you got this in the mail. If you need a book, I think there's some still up there. We have worksheets that we go through and highlight, and it's for you to see if you're actually getting this thing, right, as it's laid out, because the importance of the foundation is critical, right? A lot of people, you hear people, I have a problem with step 3. We actually don't have a problem with step 3. You have a problem with step 2. If you have a problem with step 2, it's because you have a problem with step 1, right? And usually people struggle with their own ideas. Anybody? How many people have been through the group a couple times? Right? So the biggest problem was struggling with your ideas. You think you're struggling with our ideas, but you don't know what our ideas are yet. Right? So it's a one-sided conversation. How many people sat in a meeting, looked on the wall, and tried to figure this thing out? Okay, I done step 1. That's not a problem. Step 2, Step 3, forget about it. Step 4, I could take your inventory for a while. 5, I could even share it with somebody. Right? And then 6 and 7, we'll leave that one alone. 8, no. 9, forget it. 10, I could continue to take my inventory, and when I'm wrong, which is hardly never, right? Right, you hear a lot of people talk about step 10 all the time, like that's the stuck on self step, right? Then we get into 11, then we get into 12, and as the result of this thing, you'll have the collective understanding. It's not a singular experience. It's not my program. You hear people, I'm working on my program. Well, welcome back, right? Yeah. It's not your program, right? When you write a book and put it out there and get the reviews of, 80 years? Mm. Almost 90. Almost 90 years, right? When you put a book together, then you can say it's your program, right? And how it works. Anybody ever hear how it works while somebody's reading it? I know you're thinking, but in there says, if you want what we have, you need to understand what that is. Right? Most people have a singular understanding based on themselves. They don't have a collective understanding, right? This whole thing is collective. None of it's singular. right? And anybody's wheel starting already? How many people are here right now? 2. That's not bad, right? 30 people in a room. What was that again? Okay, so you just got this in the mail, right? Or it's the first time getting one and sitting in front of you, right? Without realizing it's the basis of the beginning of the idea of the presentation of step 2. How many people find that surprising? You haven't even opened up the book yet, but it's the beginning of the presentation of step 2.
Which means that what we're asking you to do is place yourself in a position where the only interaction you have with Alcoholics Anonymous up until this point is receiving this book, which is going to require you to take everything you think you know. That's not a part of this experience, right? Because we're here to have a new experience, right? We're here to receive new information we might not necessarily be armed with, right? Make sense?
So how many people sat in a discussion meeting and talked about the topic comes up on a certain step, and how many people's talked about it? And if you were to say, can you show me what you're talking about, how many people would end the conversation right there? Right? So we see it's natural to do that. You hear something at one meeting, you think they must be telling you the truth because they got 30 days and you got 5, so they must be right. Right? Then you're sharing their idea at the next study or the next meeting. Anybody? How many people's relapsed here? You ever notice that when you share, you go, well, I never really did it before.
Yeah.
Well, we know that. How do you know that? Welcome back, right? So you know, one of the things about this thing is I spent 11 years in and out of the fellowship thinking I was in a program with a lot of information that I thought was critical was absolutely useless. But I didn't know that because I didn't have nothing to go with other than my own ideas, right? I thought it said, figure this thing out. Anybody figure this thing out? And everybody talks about my idea, my conceptions. Yeah. Everybody's stuck with their own idea, but it's not collective. So when a guy, my last relapse, I did 360 meetings in 90 days. It was 1989. I got out here in 87. So I just turned 20, and that's at that time it was 10 years in and out. Right? So my last relapse, I did about 360 meetings in 90 days, and I was in 4, 12, and 12 studies. And I remember April 8th getting a 3-month chip and thinking I had this thing because I did a self-check-in, right? I don't think about it. There's no obsession. I don't want to drink.
You don't think about what?
Drinking. I don't want to drink.
How many of you have said that? I'm not even thinking about drinking. How many of you have experienced that, right? Sort of early recovery, going to meetings, hanging out with sober people, right? I'm not even thinking about drinking. How many of you drank again? Okay.
So the misconception starts right as soon as the terminology starts with somebody saying the obsession is left, thinking that's the problem. That's not the problem, right? The ego wants to say, I can see, feel, and touch this, so I can depend on me to keep me sober, right? Yeah. So when we go through this, we'll see what places us beyond human aid and why we can't depend on ourselves to keep us sober. There's a different component from alcoholism and the human condition. They're 2 different things, but a lot of people say they're the same thing. Right? I woke up this morning with untreated alcoholism. Well, either you need to go to Al-Anon or you need to do the steps, right? And so when they say, when we go through this thing, it's really going to make a lot of sense the way they put this together, right? And why you can't depend on you to keep you sober. Anybody ever heard the term daily reprieve? Yeah. We heard it, but if you actually had to explain it, it'd be different. So most people think their daily reprieve is, as long as I don't drink today, go to meetings, and I pray in the morning, give thanks at night, that's my daily reprieve. Anybody? Yeah. That's not the daily reprieve. That's you still trying to fix you with you. Right? So we get this in the mail. We open it up to the title page, which somebody stole out of my book, so we'll have to go with yours. I need a new book. It's falling apart. My birthday's coming up. No, I need a new book. So what does your title page say?
It says Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. This is the 4th edition.
So when we ask that, right, and what we do, we'll ask a question, when they say we beg of you be honest from the very start, it's honest about your thinking in regards to the answer, right? A lot of people will come up with a certain answer. They hear somebody else give an answer and they'll go with that answer instead of what you need to do is kind of check your own thinking in regards to this. Are you understanding the collective understanding, right? So when we see this, most people, when they said, what's the most important statement there of what they're saying? What's the most important part? The story. Is that what you first came up with, or did you say recovered? Yeah, most people say recovered, right? But without the story, the recovered part isn't so spectacular, right? Anybody? I know nobody's been to court with this fine group of people, but one of the things they want to know is, what's your story, right? Why are you here again, right? And any good storytellers here? We're amazing how we could spin things, eh? Oh yeah, just give me 2 seconds. I'll come with something not only baffle you, but will baffle me, right? Because we can come up with stuff pretty fast, right? Like right on, right? So I remember a lot of times people get into a jam. I know nobody's been in a jam here. And you're thinking, I don't know how I got into it. People are calling me on it. And you come up with something that even amazes you. Anybody been amazed with some of the stuff they've come up with? And the first person's got to believe it is you, and then you sell it, right? And then sometimes you walk away going, holy shit, that was good. Like, oh my God, I don't know. It was one time I was probably 17, and they didn't want to serve me because I was underage, right? And I got resentful. I got drunk, and I told my buddy, stop here. We pulled up in front of it. And I leaned out of the car, and I took a beer bottle, and I hoofed it out the window and smashed the big picture window. He got freaked out. He took off. I fell out of the car. Right? He kept on going. The guy came out of the car. Out of the store. He was so pissed off, right? And he grabs me. He says, what are you doing? I said, it wasn't me. It was those guys in the car taking off there, right? Please, everybody. I stuck to my story. I got away with it, and I go, wow, that was good, right? Anyways, so it's the story. So right away there, so the first part of the book up to page 44 actually deals with step 1 and 2. You hear people say, well, the first part of the book only deals with step 1. Anybody ever hear that? Well, it's incorrect. What they're giving you is the format of the information necessary to make a decision. Right? So they need to tell you what's the story is a part of it. And the second part is recovered from what? Alcoholism. So most people would go with your own idea here because you don't know what they're talking about yet. Does that kind of make sense? So we need to kind of go through this to find out what they're talking about. So forward to the preface.
Yeah, just identifying on the preface that the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left largely untouched. Before that, it says that because this book has become the basic text, and in that paragraph indicates to us 2 very important pieces of information, right? One, that this is a textbook, right? It's an instruction manual, right? It's going to teach us something. And the second part is that this first portion of this volume is the AA recovery program. So when we're referring to the program, what are we referring to?
Oh, specifically.
For those of you who have not gone through the process and heard us sort of beat this drum, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's just received this book, right? Set aside all of your ideas that you've heard from other people in meetings, the things that you think you know. And when we ask that question, what is your first answer? If we refer to the words recovery program, what are we referring to?
Well, we just read it. See, this is the funny thing with our minds, right? We'll give you the answer, and then we'll ask you a question on it, and we'll go somewhere else. We'll give you the answer. First portion, right? So where would one find the AA recovery program?
First portion. First portion of the right book.
Yeah, first portion, right?
Of this volume. Right? However, when we're sitting in meetings, when we're chatting with each other, we commonly use the language, I'm a member of this program, I've been in this program, she's in this program, he's in this program, right?
Right.
And what we are is members of a fellowship. When we're talking about the word program, we're talking about the first portion of this volume, right? And they're not the same thing. I'm not a member of this program. I'm a member of this fellowship. This program is something that I went through, a course of action, had an experience, right? And now I live by the principles of this program.
Like, I went to high school for years. Never participated in many of the classes, but I went. Where were you? In school. Where in school? Out back. Right?
Well, these pieces of information are incredibly important because if you are like Tony and you've been hanging around for the first 10 years and you're not experiencing anything like close to, never mind contented sobriety, just sobriety at all, right? You might think that I'm a member of this program, I'm in this program, I'm doing this program by going to meetings and hanging out with sober people. Why is this thing not working for me, right? And that's because you're hanging out in the fellowship. There's no program involved.
And you're doing everything that's suggested. You're going to meetings, right? You're trying not to drink. You don't want to drink, right? You're trying to become a better person. You're reading page 449 or 417. You're accepting, you surrender. You get all the lingo, but meanwhile, the cheese factory up there is on full alert, right? Like, it's like the brain's going overtime. Anybody's brain just has the best of them 90% of the time. How many people's brain wakes you up before you wake up? Time to get busy again. We got some shit to look at. We'll pick up from last night. Like, I've never in early sobriety go, boy, it was such an eventful day thinking all day. Can't wait to do that again.
But in this state, so long as we're not thinking about drinking, we think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, right? In order to avoid this next drink. And what the book is going to explain to us in these pages all the way up to page 44 is why that doesn't work, right? That's the definition of alcoholism. But first, they're going to introduce themselves in the foreword to the first edition. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So we have 3 facts now, right? Well, 4. That this is the story of how many men and women recovered, right? That this is a basic text.
Where did you start reading?
Forward to the first edition.
Page 9.
Our favorite topic.
So the facts as we've covered them right now, right? That this is the story of how many men and women have recovered, right? It's their experience. That this is a basic text, and that the program of recovery can only be found where? Somebody's listening in here.
So really cool. So most books are textbooks are put together by how many people?
Bill and Dr. Silver.
No, how many? When you read a textbook, how many people usually put a textbook together?
Many.
1, right? And they use other information, but they put the textbook together as one person. Here, how many people are putting this together? Over
100 women.
Right? Men and women. So they're saying collectively they all agree on what the problem is, what the solution is, and what the course of action is. Do they know what they're talking about and referring to, and do they all agree on what they're about to say?
Yes.
Who's the only one that don't know what they're talking about?
Ourselves.
Us, the reader, right? But does that stop us from having an opinion of what we think they're talking about? Well, we got an opinion. Anybody? Yeah, you know what the hard... So one of the most magical things to say in this group, which is really hard, you can practice at home, your tongue won't fall off, is I don't know. Let's practice that together.
I don't know.
Everybody okay?
It hurt.
Oh, good. It hurt a little bit, right? So it's one of those things because we don't like not to know. Right? So we keep on guessing. Give me another, instead of saying, hey,
So
you know
that's
what? I don't
an
know.
interesting exercise for the purposes of the workshop, right? Like, we ask a question, and we have a very interesting vantage point from here, right? Because we ask a question from which we've already provided the answer to you, and all of a sudden it's like 30 deer in headlights, right? And I don't know why, right? Because the whole purpose of the workshop is not to put you on the spot or to make you feel dumb or to make you feel uninformed. It's for you to finally get a sense of how little you know about what you're up against.
Right.
And because, some of you or possibly all of you, your life might depend on it at some point, it's kind of vital information to have. So for the purposes of the workshop, when we ask a question and you don't know the answer, right, instead of worrying about what that looks like, set that aside and think, okay, there's a bit of information that I don't fully understand. Right?
So as you read through this, which is your job, you read through it, you hit some highlights. So you hear a big debate within our fellowship from people that don't understand, right? So we try not to argue with people that don't understand what we're talking about because it doesn't make sense, right? So in the reading so far, has these people recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body?
We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So have they recovered?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know what they mean by seemingly hopeless state of mind and body?
Yeah.
No. Because the only experience we have is we've had this book mailed to us, right? We've set aside all the things we think we know. We've already agreed we know nothing. So we only have the information that's been provided to us up until this point.
And then you get those really happy people in AA say, well, not all of them stayed sober. You ever hear that? Bright light, right? But they started the 4th edition by saying thousands. The first edition, it was only the first 100 men and women who had recovered. Now the 4th edition, it opened with thousands. So there's a recipe here that they've incorporated that allowed them to have a certain experience that we've yet to have. That's why we're investigating. We're hoping, right, that we can have a different experience. Anybody? How many people is looking forward to their past being their future? How many people around you is looking forward to your next relapse? So usually people who are in big book studies have tried everything else, right? How many people here sat in 12 and 12 meetings and got loaded again? Right? So we're hoping that'll work. How many people tried abstinence? How many people just tried meetings? How many people tried everything else? And then it's like, okay, what's this thing you guys talking about? Now we're into the book, right? Because it takes that, right? Because I'd rather figure this out than have you explain it to me. Anybody?
Yeah.
I know sobriety. I know. So when these guys asked me, after 11 years in and out, where's the program of recovery? Because George was vetting me. He started working with me without my permission, right? I showed him the directory and I said 90 meetings in 90 days because I had no other information to go with. I thought that was the program of recovery. Meeting makers make it. Why do people get drunk? Because they stop going to meetings. Anybody hear that?
All the time.
Which is misinformation. What happens to people who are going to 360 meetings in 90 days? Why are they getting loaded? Well, they haven't done step 1 yet. They haven't surrendered. They put an excuse on it. But the truth is we haven't found a solution sufficient enough to create a change to allow me to enter a daily reprieve that saves me from the fate that awaits me. Right? So that's what we kind of get into. So a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, who would be a good person to make reference to that? Who would be a good person to get their overview on what they mean by a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body?
More importantly, who would be the best person to explain what they mean by seemingly hopeless state of mind and body? Is it? Is one person who's been through it the best person to explain the symptoms of a disease to somebody who might be suffering from it? Well, the next chapter we're going to skip to is the doctor's opinion.
What?
Right?
The doctor's pretty cool.
Because I'm sure back then, before Alcoholics Anonymous had actually officially formed, alcoholics were not much different than they are now. We like our own opinions, right? And we have no shortage of them. And we would just offer, and we do this in contemporary AA, right? Has anybody ever sat in multiple meetings, hung out in AA for months or years, and gotten the distinct impression like there is dozens of ways to go through the steps? Why? Because everybody's got an opinion on how it should be done, right? Even though we have an instruction manual, everybody's got a different opinion on how it should be done. So for the purposes of a big book study, we're going to go to what it says in black and white.
So is it their experience open to interpretation?
No.
Because there's over 100 of them, since thousands, right? They haven't changed this thing since they put it together. So there must be something here, right? And so one of the most amazing things is the first page of the doctor's opinion, because it sets up the whole idea of kind of like the hopeless feature that people seem to be afflicted with, that he observed within his facility, people who he tried to help who had signs of a drinking problem or a problem that came into his facility, and he was able to help back when Prohibition was still happening, when you kind of think back in 1933. right? He gives his observations on people that are beyond his scope or beyond his help. That's why we're here, Alcoholics Anonymous, because if his facility would have been able to treat people like us, would we have Dr. Silkworth's program of recovery? Yes, if his methods worked for people like us, then we would be reading his methods that he used within his facility, right?
Right.
So obviously he's going to talk about something about a certain group of people are beyond his scope of helping. That's what he's getting up to here. That's where Alcoholics Anonymous started, with the witnessing of people who are beyond human aid. We'll get into what that means. Or people who couldn't get sober on their own experience, kept on finding themselves drinking again after not wanting to drink. And one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. So want to lay that on us?
So now that we understand who the founding members are, right, what they're saying is, we've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. They have not explained to us what that means yet. They go, here, we're going to give you a doctor's opinion first. Never mind our opinion. We're going to give you the doctor's experience first, right? And they say, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. This is not a collective story of just our beliefs and opinions, right? It's a collective story of our experience backed up by the opinion of an actual doctor that worked many decades in this field. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter.
Because people like us, we baffle a lot of people. Like, we go to treatment, we go put all the effort into changing our lives. Like, we'll do anything. Remember the first couple days, snot running out of your nose, I'll do anything. Right? 2 weeks in, well, let's not get carried away. Right? You mistaken feeling better for getting better? So he's going to kind of observe people who are like us, that we don't know what we're really like. But he's doing a witness. Like there's our story, and then there's people around us story about us. Right. And they're two different stories. I don't know if anybody ever realized that, right?
Yeah, each testimony is a different vantage point, right? One is from within, what it's like to experience this thing, but the other one is what it's like to observe it happening. And really, and they refer to this later on in the book, it equates to like watching somebody beat themselves in the head with a hammer. I'd be like, well, I'm not going to do that again. But then a couple weeks later, they do it again, right? And they do it again, and then they do it again, and then they do it again. Always emerging remorseful. It's not going to happen again. The wounds heal, right? Promises are made. What happens? It happens again. And that's what it looks like to the outside person who's not experiencing it.
See, you're the only one convinced of something that nobody else around you is. How many people has told people around them, you're going to change, you're not going to do it again, and that's it? And I was listening to a song today from the 70s. It says, you already said you weren't going to do it again, and here you are doing it again. Right? Depeche Mode, I think it was, right? I thought it was so funny. I guess they're dealing with somebody like us. Like, they're horrified of what they did. I'm never doing that again. Oh, I promise, I'm so horrified of what I did. Anybody been there? Horrified of what they've done? And you're never doing it again, and everybody around you believes you're never doing it again, and then you do it again? Yeah. And you're shocked at their response to you? Go ahead.
So he confirms that he's specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. He says in late 1934, he attended a patient who, though, had been a competent businessman. And that's probably important to note, right? Like, he's saying, like, for all other aspects, this guy, you know, should just appear to be a normal guy, right? He had good earning capacity, but was an alcoholic of a type the doctor had come to regard as hopeless.
So there's two things happening here. There's this human potential, human condition, but he's afflicted with an illness. Because this illness is present, does he get to live the life of his potential? So if we didn't have this illness, would our life look a lot different?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So that's why we get into that conversation. Why are you doing this? I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe I did that again. Anybody ever have a conversation with themselves in the mirror? What's the matter with you? I can't believe you're doing that. Because yeah, it was an Uber, back of a cop car. So what he's getting here is that we're kind of baffled at a situation that we don't know that continuously happens. So this guy here, he come to regard this guy as hopeless, right? So when he come to regard him as hopeless was the second time leaving his facility and he relapsed again. Like the second time leaving treatment that back then was sufficient enough to go and other people paid for his treatment.
It's probably important to note that and we have some of this documented information, that Towns Hospital at this time received lots of these kinds of patients, right? They'd come in, banged up, beaten up, families had, enough of the situation. They sort of hydrotherapy, a little bit of talk therapy, a little bit of nutrition, right? They get them back on their feet. And maybe they don't see them again, right? There's some decisions made, some cognitive behavior modification, all that kind of stuff, and they don't see them again. But, they do this with this particular patient, send him back out to his family, and he arrives back a second time, right? And this is the time that he's like, this guy is hopeless, right? We've thrown everything we know at this particular patient, right? And he goes on to say that he would occasionally come in contact with a patient like this, right? These are the types that he came to regard as hopeless.
So his third treatment, he goes back there, and what happens? In the course of his third treatment, so he's going back there 3 times. This is his third time. What was the doctor's diagnosis of this guy coming back to his facility for the third time?
That he was
Hopeless. He already knew the outcome because he tried everything within his means to, and we'll get into that story later, so it's pretty wild what's about to happen here, right?
In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. So now we have the confirmation of a medical doctor at this point in time confirming what our founding members said in the foreword to the first edition, that we are over 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body.
And as we go through this, we're going to acquire the same ideas, and if you choose to put these into practice, you can have the same experience they had. So, I'm dying of alcoholism in AA, right? But when I got conned into that big book study, right, actually had to be conned out, like my cheese and cracker weren't even on the same plate. I know it's hard to believe, like the condition I was in was I'm vomiting green bile, I can't hold a job, I'm dangerously antisocial. But I thought I was the nicest guy you ever wanted to meet, just a little bit of bad luck right now, right? And I had federal warrants for my arrest. I was looking at penitentiary time, like I'm in bad shape. And this is in and out of AA for 11 years. I couldn't even imagine my life, what it would look like if there was I would be dead. There would have been no doubt whatsoever about it. So I acquired certain ideas going into that big book study. Even with a guy in my mental health, I went through it and I agreed to the conditions that this guy did and they did. I agreed that the solution may be possible to obtain. I did the same course of action they did. And this April 8th will be 35 years. So 46 years in AA. 35 as the result of acquiring the same ideas that they put into practice that I put into practice. And I've never met anybody in the last almost 35 years who's ever done this and who's ever maintained it, who's ever relapsed. Not one person. And so we go, how many people has relapsed as the result of this course of action in this book? Well, put up your hand. How many people has relapsed as the result of this course of action? How many people has relapsed as the result of not doing this course of action? So it's interesting, the resistance that we have to this thing. How many times we see those people coming into the meeting. They're going to talk about the book. They're so happy. Is there somebody here with a problem? Right? There seems to be something different about these people who have gone through this, right? There seems to be something inwardly changed. They seem to be having a different experience than I'm having. Like these guys that I went through, I used to think of them, I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe I'm with these guys. I used to see them all the time. They'd hang out together. Like, oh, my God. You got to be pretty to hang out with them.
That's how I felt about you.
I know. Right? And these guys saved my life. And then I'm sitting out, a year later, I'm sitting and have dinner with them. And I love these guys. I'm so overwhelmed with these guys, what they did for me. It was pretty. So our brain ain't not quite right. And the doctor's going to get into that kind of setting, right? Okay. So over in the next page.
Well, hang on. He goes out to close out the letter by saying, these men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. That's quite a statement from a medical doctor back in the mid-1930s, right? This is not an area of medical expertise that doctors are flocking to go into, right? There's really no solution for these people. It's kind of like a dead-end gig. You're never going to get your patients well, right? So for him to go on the record saying, hey, I don't know, these guys come, they talk to each other, they share their experience, strength, and hope. They go through a couple of steps, and they come out the other side, and everything that we've thrown at them has not seemed to work, and yet this thing does, right? And for him to make a statement, you may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves, is quite an impactful statement from a medical doctor in the mid-1930s.
So when they say a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, I need to kind of get what they're talking about. So when they talked about the body, that's the first symptom in alcoholism. So a lot of people, you hear they say, oh, I did step one before I got here. You may have been suffering from step one before you got here. But in order to actually concede to step one, is you have to find out what this thing is and then see if you have actually exhibit what they're talking about. Like, have I been under this illness for a longer period of time than I thought? Right? It's like by the time you bring your car to the mechanic, is the problem already existing? Right? You bring it there, and then you tell them what's going on with it. It goes, right? You make all weird noises, and they go, oh, yeah, it sounds like this. Then they'll do a diagnostic on it, right? And they'll say, this is the problem.
But at that point, right, when you're experiencing the symptoms, right, and you're coming into the mechanic to explain what it is you're experiencing, have you put the finger on what the problem is yet? No, you don't know what's wrong. You just know something's wrong, right? You spend, if we parallel that with the symptoms of alcoholism, we spend years trying to come up with the reasons why our car's making a weird noise. It never dawns on us to take it to somebody who might have better knowledge and understanding than we do, right?
And if you don't understand what the problem is, you think it was pre-existing before the problem happened.
Right.
Then we start applying our own solutions, right?
And you hear stuff like, oh, I was an alcoholic before I even drank, which is impossible. Or because of this happened in my life, that happened, that's why I'm alcoholic, which would make good sense if you didn't understand alcoholism. Does that kind of make sense? So what we're going to do is they're going to give us the description of what the problem is, right? They're going to give us an overlay, what it looks like for people who have it. And what you get to diagnose as you go through this is kind of, I seem to exhibit these symptoms, and I've been exhibiting them for a while now, right? And so what they talk about, the first symptom in alcoholism, they talk about a little farther down, the doctor's theory that we have
an allergy to alcohol interests us. But prior to that, it says, in our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete, before they go into that statement. Mm-hmm. Even prior to that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind, right? They're already sort of setting us up to understand or to challenge the belief that this is something just within our mental control, right?
Well, you might as well keep reading it, because that's an interesting point, right? We don't think so. We overskip it, right? But when you read it, is kind of his observations with people with our type of thinking, how we view things, how we approach things, how we do things. He gives us his overview on dealing with people like us in regards to their situation.
In this statement, he confirms what we have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life. How many people are not just interested, but almost gain a sense of relief to find out that this is not just a matter of being an asshole?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I mean, you may be an asshole, but...
No. You're all assholes. But But it's not just a matter of being a bad person, right? This is why we drink the way that we do. What they're saying here is that there's a physical feature here that most of us are either not looking at, not observing, or just flat out don't understand or have any knowledge about.
Full flight.
That we were in full flight from reality or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say, his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account.
So the way it was explained to me, because my education or understanding wasn't that great, and the guys who were around me helping me did the plain language. They put it into plain language for me, right? I didn't have to go. So I didn't. How could I be allergic to it? I drink a 40 and with a bit of methamphetamine, I could go for days.
Like almost a point of pride.
Yeah, like 40 ounces. Yeah. Anyway, so an allergy. So back then, the terminology is they're trying to explain something that they really don't have a full scope on, right? So what's the normal reaction to alcohol? Well, the normal percentage of people when they drink, they get an out of control, nauseated feeling. They could only drink so much and they can't drink anymore. I don't understand that. My wife's like that. She's a problem drinker. I don't drink like that. If I drank like that, it'd be a problem, right? If I could drink like my wife, I'd do it all day. So,
but that's the observation I'm sure many of you have had of other people, right? Somebody has something important to do the next day, or maybe even that evening. Maybe they've got to drive home. They have something going on, right? That's they're gonna moderate the amount that they drink, right? They're gonna have a half a drink. I know, weird, or do you know what I mean? Like they're only going to have one or two drinks because they don't like the feeling, right? I get a nauseated, out of control feeling. 2 drinks is enough for me. It doesn't make a lot of sense to us, right?
So when you talk about an abnormal reaction, I thought I had normal reaction. I didn't really think I had an alcohol problem. I had a consequence problem. Anybody? Yeah. I have a consequence. I'm not a drinker, but I could drink. I'm amazed how much I could drink. I'm okay with how much I drink, right? So when they were talking about this thirst, I thought, thirst? What do you mean thirst? They said, well, go back in your drinking history. So I'd go back, like the first time I drank, I was in diapers, right? So it was like, and there'd be wine and beer and rye and Coke and different, like here's a drink, right? Growing up, parties and stuff, French, in Quebec, working on the farm, working in the fields, you get a beer and all that other. I was always okay with the beer I was having or the drink I was having. I would be contented to sit there with a rye and Coke, watching Sweet Daddy Siki in Toronto at the Horseshoe Tavern as a 9-year-old kid, right? They'd give me a rye and Coke and I'd drink it and I'd sit there, I feel all grown up, right? And that was it. But somewhere along the line, before I was even finished the drink I was having, I started thinking about the next drink. Somewhere I started, and I remember exactly where that happened. When I wasn't finished the first drink and I was thinking about the next drink. Right? And I said, so that was the beginning of alcoholism without even realizing it.
But if you fast forward from that point in your drinking career to the point where you started considering that something might be wrong, right? You started seeking help or suffering the consequences, right? And you said earlier, like, the consequences were the problem, right? And how many of you thought, like, I'm in a lot of trouble. Like, I just need to rein it in, right? How many of you have had that thought? If I could just rein it in, right? I'm just going to have 2 or 3. I'm just going to have 2 or 3. I'm only going to take a 6-pack to the party. I'm only going to, and that mentality of trying to moderate started to kick in, right? So you didn't have to suffer the consequences because the consequences were the problem, not the drinking, right? And how many of you were successful at reining it in? And this is what we're talking about, right? It wasn't a matter of just mental control. Something physical was going on, right? And this is what the doctor is explaining to us, that this was something physical that was beyond the capability of being able to control with the mind.
So that then, as it progressed, I remember times I had to do something, important engagement, right? Or paychecks, or groceries, rent money in one pocket, drinking money in the other pocket. Anybody been there? and you know, you got all these plans and designs for your money, and then you wake up broke or in trouble, and you're not making it to the next payday. Anybody? So then I remember many a time sitting with a drink in my hand thinking there's something seriously wrong with my life. Sitting there drinking, trying to figure out how to fix my life. As I ordered another one, I think, there's something the matter with you. How am I going to fix me with me? Right? So like 11 years, but this one time, I think at this time I was 5 years or 4 years trying to get sober. No, 3. And this old timer says, the reason you can't get sober is because you lack discipline. Made sense, right? So I sat there thinking, how would a guy get discipline? As I was drinking, I joined the Army. Like, how many different ways have I tried to fix me with me or try to curb change?
Extreme ways. Like joining the armed forces.
Bad idea.
That's a pretty extreme thing for a guy like you.
Like, I had an afro shoulder wide, right? And anyway, we'll get into that story later. But the allergy was drinking beyond the ability where I could stop. My idea was So you ever hear people about controlling and enjoying your drinking? I don't understand that. If I'm enjoying it, I'm not controlling it. Anybody?
Yeah.
Right? And if I'm controlling it, I'm not enjoying it. Right? Got the harnesses on, and anybody ever try to pace themselves with other people?
Yeah, right.
This is a single speed transmission, right?
I remember, I'm going to control myself. Because I'm at a family reunion, I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm just going to have wine. I'm just going to have beer. I'm going to behave myself tonight. Anybody been there?
That's the last family reunion you got invited to.
So yeah, after 3 drinks, I'm not related to anybody. So I made amends for that. So the funny thing is like it's kind of weird, but I'm trying to pace myself. So I think people are going for the drink, so I'd go for my drink, and they're not going for the drink. They're going for the salt pepper. So I'd go.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, people. And then we're weird, right? When you watch us, anybody been at a party where they come and pour your wine for you?
Oh,
yeah. That's highbrow.
I watch my wife and people do it since, right? And so the guy will come around. My wife will hand the glass and they'll top it up a bit. Then there's people like me at the party. We'll go 1 second. Finish the wine with a little head bat, like shoot it right back, and now you can fill it up.
Yeah, it's an efficient refill.
Anybody? Like, and stuff. So the allergy, like wanting more. Like, I remember being at weddings. I think, God, I was on a three day drunk, and I thought, oh my God, I couldn't eat, right? And it was at my cousin's wedding, but the party's later. But I need to get some sleep. Right, I need to get some sleep, but I don't want to miss the party. Anybody ever been there? So where would a guy fall asleep so he wouldn't miss the party? I went and slept behind the bar. I know when the bartender got in there, he'd have to wake me up, right? 17 years old, right? Hey, there's a kid sleeping on the floor. Not anymore. Let's get busy, right? So, and I would drink stuff that other people would, like barrel rot and like anybody. Swish, anybody drink Swish? Right? Like stuff that normal people go. He said, do we use the barrel? Is this the 3rd time? It caused blindness, for God's sake, if you don't get it. It's like, here, you have a couple glasses. You all right? Okay.
Yeah, if the other person doesn't hit the deck first, then it's safe
so
to
that
go.
thirst, right? So your brain's going, I got to go home and do this, this, and this. And your body says, no, you need to have another drink. Right. And after the 2nd or 3rd drink, you notice you're not thinking about anything anymore. Then it's last call. Anybody been there? Where did the night go? Now you order all that booze. Anybody? Now the trick is, how do I get that out of the bar?
Yeah.
Normal people don't do that. Surprise to me. Anybody? Then you have, so the allergies, that thirst, and to me it was a successful night. If I didn't get in trouble, that was a successful night of drinking. Not how much I drank. The only time I drank too much is when I got in trouble. That determined how much I drank too much and why I got in trouble. Anybody ever really hung over here and blamed the pop?
Because I drank.
Yeah, so the allergy, we see this thing happening, then you're doing the hair of the dog that bit you, you're dealing with other professional drinkers to teach you how to drink, and now there's lunchtime and there's milkshakes and you think big gulps and you think, right? So everything's starting to be planned around drinking. Right? You're going to the theater, you got a Mickey, you're going to the bar, you got 26. Like normal people don't do that stuff. We get lit before we go.
Yep.
Anybody?
Yep.
Maybe some people who might go through a phase in their youth and then come out the other side of it, right? And I think that probably, brings us to our next point. Like, what does it mean, really, to be alcoholic? The whole statement leading into this chapter was they declared themselves seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, and we didn't know what they meant by that. And on page 24, they're going to start to give us that first idea, right, of the first symptom of alcoholism. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy.
Chronic means it continues to happen. Right? Like I'm going to control myself, I'm not going to drink, but I drink and I get in trouble again. Anybody? Because I think I drank too much, but the reason I'm getting in trouble because I can't control the amount I drank. If I could control the amount of drink, then I wouldn't get in trouble. Does that kind of make sense? So what makes me aware that there's a problem is I keep getting in trouble. Anybody? Then I start having blackouts. Anybody? Doing things that I don't want to do and I'm not doing, right? Drinking is becoming more important. Everything's drinking oriented.
That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker.
Why do they call it a phenomenon?
It's an extraordinary event.
So they're trying to explain, this is important in regards to step one. This is something as we go along. They're trying to explain something that doesn't make any sense. It's a phenomenon. But there's a group of them that's got together, says we seem to have this characteristic, or this is what it looks like when we drink.
Confirmed by the doctor.
Confirmed by the doctor and confirmed by people like us, right? We seem to be different than these other people who could stop, moderate, or change what they're doing, but we seem to get in more trouble more frequently when we drink. Then we promise not to do it again. Anybody? And then we do periods of time, we do pretty good, and then we find ourselves drinking again. Anybody here? Before even seeking help. This, right? Okay.
These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve.
See, they're human problems. Why are humans problems piling up on us? Because we're not meeting our responsibilities.
Because the consequences are getting worse, right?
We're drinking the rent money. We're drinking the support money. We're drinking and driving. We're not showing up at work. Anybody?
Yep.
So what's happening is this illness is now determining how I'm going to govern my life. Everything's around drinking now. I can't change my drinking to accommodate my life, so I got to change my life to accommodate my drinking. Anybody like that? And then people who try to say something to us, we punish them so they feel it better not to say nothing to us. Anybody?
Yeah.
Right? So people like and the people around are having anxiety. What kind of condition are you in today? Is dad or mom in a good mood? Uncle in a good mood? Or do we leave them alone? Or are they hungover? Right? Sick again? Oh, sick again? Go watch videos, right? Is the kids always absent from, or the people around us absent from? Do they leave us alone because they know what happens when they bother us? Right? Got quiet.
Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight.
What does frothy emotional appeal mean?
If your wife or you and like, hey, like you have to stop, please stop.
How many people has had people talk to you about your drinking? They observe there's something not right with you.
How many of you have sat through an intervention? Right? Do you care about those people?
Of course.
Yes.
Are these the most important people in your life?
Right.
Yes.
Would you do anything for them if they needed you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you mean that?
Yeah.
Would you pass a lie detector test?
Yeah.
Then why can't you do this for them?
Yeah, you ever sit at home and everybody's quiet and then one of those rehab commercials come on and everybody Everybody stops and looks at you, and you go, what? Like, you get offended that they're looking at you.
Somehow you found yourself on the mailing list of every detox center in your local area. You didn't sign up for any of it.
And you notice when we talk about our drinking, this week I did all right. Not the whole time. This week I'm doing good. This week. Right? I've been good 2 weeks now. Right? And we kind of do anything for a drink, and then we kind of look, okay, everybody's relaxing. And then you come home happy, and then nobody's happy but you, right? So frothy emotions, how many people, like I said, had that conversation with themselves? Come on, you got to quit. You got to do something. Look what you're doing. You're having that conversation in the mirror, but you don't realize there's something governing you that doesn't make sense because your hopes and dreams and desires are not meeting the life that you want. You have the potential of great things. You build a great life up for yourself, right? You got people that love you, do anything for you, and here you are doing an act against your own will again. Frothy emotional appeal. And we try to do that in meetings, right? Frothy emotional appeal, the cheering section. But we're dealing with something beyond our ability to deal with, but we're the only ones that don't know that yet because we don't understand what the problem is. So when we start...
We buy into that as well, though, right? Having a rough day, going to go to a meeting. Let the meeting make me feel better, right? And I'm not saying that being amongst the fellowship can't improve a mood, can't improve your day. But what we're talking about, right, is we're starting to get into something that is we're going to start using language like beyond human aid, right? We're going to need a solution probably bigger than another person because frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices, right?
And he revisits that idea. He says in nearly all cases, their ideas, remember he talked about that guy acquired certain ideas? Now he's expanding on that. These certain types of people, right? In nearly all cases, their ideas must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they're to recreate their lives. The longevity, the long game, not the short game, the long game. Like, have I found a recipe sufficient enough that I can continuously have a different experience than I've had in the past, right? 11 years in and out, each time I thought it was different. Each time I thought, this is it. And I didn't know what I was dealing with. So, of course, right? Like you hear people say, like, step one is what you're agreeing to is you're going to relapse again. Right? So here they talk about men and women.
Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol.
Anybody need that explained? 34 years doing this, no one's ever said, I don't know what you mean. Oh, an Al-Anon, I think it was your mom. I don't know what you mean, but okay. You don't need that explained. The sensation, right? Okay.
The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks.
That's not alcoholism. That's the human condition and not having a solution for it.
Drinks which they see others taking with impunity.
A lot of people, that's alcoholism. They'll be irritable, restless, and discontent. My wife's irritable, restless, and discontent once a month. And I would never say, hey, looks like you're suffering from untreated alcoholism. That's the human condition. I get irritable, restless, discontent, but I apply a solution. These people don't have a solution to their human dilemma. Right? So they see other people's drinking with impunity. They remember the sense of ease and comforts by taking a few drinks. They don't remember the pain, suffering, and humiliation. They remember their mind plays a trick on them. Right? Anybody been there? You don't remember the pain, agony, and suffering, all that other. All you remember is, I need something. I need something so I could be comfortable within my own skin. So what did I used to use to be comfortable in my own skin? Alcohol. Now I don't have that, and I have no other solution. So the more I'm away from a drink, the more crazier I become. Anybody get crazier here? The more the cheese factory gets louder. Right? The machines get louder, everything gets louder, people get louder. I don't like you because I'm not liking me. Anybody? Walking on eggshells around you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do.
So something happens in the brain. They're going to get into that later. So this thing comes back. And what happens?
the phenomenon of craving develops, and they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again.
So do these people want to drink again? No. So they don't want to drink again, but they don't have a solution.
Right.
So the circle starts again, right? The recovery clock starts again, tick, 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 tick. But they don't know because they don't want to drink again. But this condition that happens in the mind that they're going to get into later, here's what happens. This is
repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
So they're saying is there's a solution for these type of people. It's in regards to a psychic change or spiritual experience. I don't know what they mean by that, so they're going to give a couple examples of what they mean by it. So when you read this week, read the two examples he gives of people who are of this certain type, who bought into the idea of the things being presented here, the solution being presented. They applied it and had a different experience. Right, so read those two, and next week we're going to get into Bill's story, which is an example of somebody who's afflicted with alcoholism, what it looks like and the struggles he had with it, the solution being presented to him, which is the guy, he acquired certain ideas from another person, he put it into practice, and he recovered from the condition that he was suffering from, which became the program of recovery. So you see, we're covering everything here, what the problem is, what the solution is, and the solution is what? What's the solution? What did the doctor say the solution is for these types of people?
We just got an I don't know. On the other hand,
Psychic changes.
this is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
So that's step 2, the psychic change. Yes, that's the solution to the problem. We're going to get into that. And he's going to give 2 examples of that. So we're going to carry on. This is how we're going to go through the next study. We have a 7 tradition. We're self-supporting through our own contribution. We don't pass the basket around. We're responsible for paying our own way. If you have some, put some in, pays for books and literature, and then we donate some to Central or whatever. And how we close this meeting is with the Serenity Prayer for those who wish to join us. What's the basis for a great life?
God.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Live long and prosperous. Read the homework this week, and then we'll get into it next week.